Hey, you're in your clinical practice. Maybe you've worked with an individual or two. You're walking down the hall, or you're getting ready to let someone in a Zoom room. And what are you saying to yourself? And specifically, are you ready for reactivity? What are you going to do when there's a lot of chaos?
Welcome to the Leading Edge in Emotionally Focused Therapy with your hosts, Dr. James Hawkins and Dr. Ryan Rana. EFT is a dynamic model that humbles even the most seasoned therapists. Together, we want to come alongside you as you continually push the leading edge of your understanding and application of this wonderful model developed by Dr. Sue Johnson.
You know, one of my missions and one of the things that kind of breaks my heart, having hired a lot of therapists in the last 13, 14 years, I'm one of the leaders of a clinic in addition to the other hats I wear, is when really, really talented people refuse to work with couples. And it's okay. There's not a thing in the world wrong with doing other good work, but our communities need it. Yeah. And it's a huge issue, especially, you know, you're really experienced, talented, warm people. And I do think part of that is exactly the series that you've come up with here. I think they can't help, but I think all of us can't help but expect to walk into a room and have a similar experience as when you're working with an individual who's motivated and curious and relatively safe with you. And then you walk in the next hour and it's a big old reactive cycle. And you're like, man, I don't like that feeling on my nervous system. But you can get out in front of that some if you can get out in front of adjusting your expectations. Mm-hmm. If you understand, hey, this is about to be this kind of game, so to speak, that's different than this kind of thing, then I think it doesn't wear on you so heavily. So love that you came up with this series, James. Mm-hmm. And you know, you wanted to talk about trusting the map and going towards the fray. Tell me more about how you came up with that as an idea.
Yeah. So once again, thinking about how do we help join you so that way you're not going in that session completely alone, completely blank. And so for me, maybe this is speaking to my heart, you know, knowing the research on the map and how Sue and the team developed the map. It's like I have something going to what you're saying, like this reactive cycles. I'm not going in completely blank. And I'm not going in helpless. I have a tried and true process that helps me see and understand distress and give me an order. Like we've done a podcast episode on this about the order of change and to know that. But then another caveat we've added into in a way of not just the map, which when I say the map, everybody, I'm talking about the stages and steps of EFT.
Like the old school?
Yeah, the old school.
Not the tango moves.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Stage 1, de-escalation. Yeah. Stage 2, restructuring the bond. Stage 3, consolidation. Yeah. To be able to know there's different stages. And within each stage, there are, I like to say, instead of steps, I remember talking to Sue about this before she passed, of thinking of them as tasks in each stage that we do repetitively over and over to help create that those changes in each stage.
That's it.
But what about as you go into the session, not only do you have your map, but can you find the distress? That's why Sue built this map, is to help find and join people in distress and walk them through these stages to where they can have this new sense of a secure, positive cycle. And so today we're going to talk about that, is how do you go into session and find the fray to get focused?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let me say this just before we get started then on that. I want to say thank you for handling reactive couples. I know many times I'll be in a decent space and a comment's made and I can feel electricity in my torso going, oof, this is about to go bad. Mm-hmm. You know, because once I've given someone maybe a little too much space, now their partner's going to have to be heard no matter what I do. And here it comes. So I want to say thank you for giving of your energy, for giving of what that takes out of your body to hang in there with folks and jumping in that fray, because it's not easy.
That's right. And so once again, Ryan and I, we keep saying this term fray, and it's a term to describe something you probably already understood. It's just what we're trying to do. We just heard George say this on another training. We're just trying to take something that's probably been happening unconsciously for you and just make it super conscious and super explicit. And specifically what we're saying is, matter of fact, I want to say it this way because maybe you help me out. This is how I set up a session yesterday. Okay. I knew it was going to be rough. It's a new couple that I just started with, but you can feel their reactivity. It is tense. It is strong. And so coming in, I said, hey, I know this is probably only our second session back together, So last week you helped me kind of get a look at the cycle a little bit. But today I need to get really clear that I know that you all are working really hard. Like, you didn't just start working on this relationship only when you came to me. You've already been trying your best to not let that cycle get the best of you. But however, despite your best efforts, it's not working. And that leaves you feeling discouraged and hopeless. Can you take me to the place when you're trying your best and you see that it's not working? How do you know it's not working? And then I want to see that it's not working, what do you do when it's not working? So we can slow that process down.
Yeah. I like it.
Is that getting towards the F.R.A.y?
I think it's towards it. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it depends on the level of chaos. If the chaos is not that bad or you're that good, you can just George it. He just starts a session with what's happening between you two.
That's right.
Right. And again, he doesn't even know any other models. I'm just jealous of that, right? Because he's so clear, right? And that's a positive thing, not a negative thing. And I think that's a little bit more of like, hey, we're going to move it towards a focus.
That's right.
I love the validation. You are trying your best, right? It's easy for therapists to want to give advice. And remember, advice implies you're not trying very hard, or you lack something that I have, which is why it doesn't tend to be a very good intervention, particularly for second order stuckness. So I like that. But if there's a lot of chaos, then we got to find some words, some ways to cut through this and get us a good place to start.
I like that.
Yeah.
You want to go down that road then?
Sure. I mean, we were just talking before jumping on here about I'm trying to think where the F.R.A.y acronym came from exactly. Now I can't remember.
So let me make sure, in case you haven't heard it on the episode, when we say F.R.A.y, we're saying failed repair attempts yet again.
Yeah, small y.
Yep, small y.
Capital everything else.
Yep.
F.R.A.y capitalized and then y.
Yep.
Failed repair attempt yet again. So defining what that means. It doesn't matter what a couple's going through in the world. This is hard for us as therapists because we have to set aside some of our wonderful relationship philosophy and even research. Because if I believe a relationship should look like X, Y, or Z, and let's be honest with you, everyone listening to this has theories about, partners should do this, partners should do that, positivity, negativity, empathy, affection, all these wonderful ideas. We have to set that at the door to be able to work with the hardest couples in the world.
That's good.
Because we have to stay processed, and all that is normative and top-down first order.
Yeah.
So no matter what happens, think about the worst possible relationship stuff in the world. Even abuse, and I'm not justifying abuse. I'm not trying to take a huge tangent or justify any of that. I'm simply saying no matter what happens, if the couple can come back and have an attuned repair, it is not a clinical problem. It's a fact. So it's so easy to want to go up and set your tempo, your affect assembly, or just start what I think a lot of EFTers get caught doing is that as a couple tells a story, right? And it's just a story. It's a linear, blame-oriented thing. And the EFTer just goes and tries to pull emotion out of that story. Then it's just total chaos. So what we're trying to say is when someone brings in a chronic issue, when someone brings in a recent fight, or some big event, I want to be with you with summaries. That sounds really hard. Your side of this is this makes sense. Summarize enough where your body says, okay, Ryan, here's me. Then I want to go to the partner and summarize with that person again. But then the cut through language is to say, when you two try to talk about chronic issue, tell me how your conversation goes. Right. And then I want to set up my work in the repair, not in the problem. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I'll just tell you, it's my biggest failure as a trainer and supervisor because I say it and say it and say it and people don't remember. And then I ask myself, well, what makes you remember, Ryan? I'm like, my not love language, my learning language kicks in, which is failure and humiliation for years.
Wait, I want to go back to that line. That was a good one. I want to set my focus in their failed repair attempts rather than the content problem.
Yes.
I added some words. Is that
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because here's why. Some of it's just time. If you got a 16-hour intensive like I do sometimes, fine. Let them vent for an hour and a half. It's not going to do any good. What you're going to find is they're going to flood a lot. But that's okay if you can rebound from that. But if you're working on a 50 to 60 minute session, and you're going to set up emotion, pull emotion out of how someone feels about money, you better be good. You better be really good. And you better be in your second decade of this. And you can. I've seen Gail Palmer do none of this focus stuff. I've also seen her do really focused sessions when the cycle got tough. But
I might want to change the name of this, but that's a great one though, is as you're going in a session, say, how do I today help me to be able to set my focus in their inability to repair versus setting my focus in the problem, which will take us too long, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and you're walking down the hall, speaking of getting your mind right. What is this relationship walking next to me? Well, it's as good as they can repair. Like, that's it. And I hate to sound so non-humanistic, but that is the status of their bond. You know, safe, unsafe, close, not close. They're as good as they can repair, regardless of what else they got going on, what other cultures.
That's right.
Whether they're, you know, same sex, different sex, even parent-child. I mean, there's so many forms of diversity. Your relationship is as good at which you can repair.
And I feel like even because the couple I'm mentioning, like there is some cultural difference. So there's so much, but even this, like even with the cultural difference, it's still like when I focus into that fray, it like brings the process in so focused in a way to where even the cultural part, we begin to like, you know, one person might like, well, I'm used to just kind of speaking whatever's on my mind and just saying it. And the other person's like, whoa, I can't do that. I like, from where I'm from, only one person talks at a time and you wait till they completely finish. And then it's like we get into a whole battle there even. So.
I love that. Because we think about culture and diversity and we think about 2 or 3 things, but there's really thousands.
100%.
Family rules, family expectations. There's so much diversity out there, right? And you start trying to fix all that. You bring your philosophy of whether it's how much truth you should speak. You're done. You're done. You can't recover from that. It's just going to take so much time.
All right. So let's take a commercial break and we'll be right back. Do you like the content that you're hearing on this podcast? Well, we invite you to join us on successandvulnerability.com along with George Fowler and other EFT therapists and supervisors, where you get to get more thorough insight into these concepts and actually get to see it done. Once again, join us on successandvulnerability.com. So let's bring it in. Let's make it a little bit more felt, then we'll get practical. So Ryan, you were telling me a good story that like helped reinforce this. Can you share that story?
Yeah, I was just going to go back one step. It's interesting since we've been teaching this F.R.A.y for a couple of years. Participants just do not get it. And again, I don't blame them. I blame me. Maybe I'll get better someday. But my fellow trainers love it. I got fellow trainers contact me from Europe, and George, who doesn't always listen to anything we do, is like, man, he uses F.R.A.y all the time. I've been to 3 or 4 trainings. He's using it regularly. And of course, people are like, what does that mean? What's that mean? So people chat me today in the training I was in with George. What's F.R.A.y mean? People don't get it, right? So I'm hoping that I say people don't get it enough times that I jinx it or something. Yeah, so I think I started using that term coming back from old systems classes is where I could have pulled the term. But the reinforcing thing for me really quickly with this story was doing a live demo a while back. And I was working with a community I wasn't familiar with, and they weren't familiar with EFT, which was a lesson for me. So for one thing, appreciate ICEEFT, because some of those structures that people don't like sometimes there's a reason they're there. And you learn to appreciate them when you don't have them. And so anyway, I went in with this group and they said no, right? So they had all kinds of expectations. I'm like, hold on, we can't do that. We have to do this first. And we're resetting this. And when the live came up, they're like, hey, I got a live. And I got a little maybe, a little cocky maybe. Because years ago, I'm like careful who you pick. And I'm like anxious. And, anxious is not a bad thing. And I was a little too comfortable. I'm like, yeah, we'll talk through it, and an hour before they're going to show up, I'm like, tell me about this. And I'm like, uh-oh, right? And so first of all, the lady who's wonderful, she doesn't know. She's like, I brought you my hardest couple, tons of chaos, tons of pain. And a lot of the people in the group had also seen them. So people in the chat box going, oh, man, this is going to be good. I'm like, what have I done? Felt like walking out in the, what's the gladiator?
The
Coliseum.
the arena. Oh,
yeah,
Coliseum,
yeah. About to be eaten by something. But anyway, in the telling of this, a kind of a contraindicator comes up. And EFT has a loose relationship with that. It's not an absolute no, but there's probably an emotional affair going on. And they don't agree on whether or not it's an affair. And I almost pulled the plug. I think the local therapist, there's a lot going on. And so anyway, I'm like, all right, let's give it a run, but hoping that it wouldn't come up. I'm hoping we could just get into the cycle. I could show some stage 1 EFT, pull an enactment at least out of a hat and go on with life. And so, but we're in the first 3 minutes and boom, here it comes. The couple's in a fight over whether or not it is an affair, so to speak. And there's sort of contempt going back and forth. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So I had to trust my model. And so I reflect, summarize, and go right into, hey, when you two try to have a conversation about other, and that was a key thing right there, by the way, because if I would have used the word affair, one person calls it an affair, one person doesn't. So other was a nice neutral landing zone. But anyway, I stayed very, very focused on that, and it was huge. The session went well. It was hard. It wasn't like a huge breakthrough, but a series of small enactments and some raw emotion that maybe hadn't been around. But it sat on that move, which is when you two try to so slow this down for me, even take all the meaning and emotion out for just a minute. When you two try to have a conversation about this other, how does it go? Who brings it up? And they ran through 5 or 6 steps and where they got stuck. And the offendee experienced a partner as defensive. That was a middle of her telling of the affair, whatever we're going to call that thing. And that to me is like, all right, that's where I can set up my first affect assembly. I can go get a trigger right there, which I had to reset 5 or 6 times, by the way, to get it at the level I want it to be. And next thing you know, the session flowed. If I hadn't done that, it would have been endless chaos. If I had just pulled out emotion about the other, I mean, even if I got there, it would not have been focused enough to work in a 50-minute session.
Wow. So so let me put together the two things you said. So set the focus in their failed repair attempt.
Yeah.
And the trigger you're going to go for there is the trigger that tells the person my attempt to repair with you isn't working. Is that right?
Say that again.
Is the trigger that you're going to pull out of the fray to get the fray is like, and how do you know it's not working despite your best efforts? What do you notice in the relationship that indicates that it's not working?
Yeah, so you're blending your language with mine right there. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
What's your language? I want to make sure I get it.
No, that's great. That's great. What I'm looking for is not all the pain of the affair or non-affair. That's a trap.
That's good.
And we're going to get to that pain, but we're going to make that pain about the relationship and not about what happened 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 60 years ago, right? So, I mean, her body in this instance, she doesn't want to talk about it either. We want to move on, but she can't. And so then it hurts enough that she has to come together and hoping that when she sends over a conversation, she's looking for what we're all looking for, which is attunement and mirror neurons and someone to come towards this with empathy and caregiving system and all those fancy terms for what is actually very simple. And she doesn't see that. And she sees defensiveness, and then she does this, and that person does that, and then the partner does this, and then she said, we don't talk about it, oftentimes for weeks. Okay, so we know then that their intimacy is sealed off.
That's right.
Right. So but again, we're going to go right into that conversation, her perception of it, and I want to get into what she sees that says we can't repair. And then there's a really big transition coming after the fray, which we have to get it out of that hypothetical story into the here and now in the room.
That's it.
And then we're doing EFT.
And can I go? I want to talk about when I've made the mistake and not had that kind of focus. And then you start trying to grab the emotion, and I've done that before. And then they go way off, and it's like, oh, well, this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm like, this is my repair attempt on that one in a way. Hey, y'all, I'm so sorry. Like I just set that up way too big and too vague. Like, of course, this is a painful thing for you all. This, whatever the other or the betrayal. Can I get more specific for a moment right here in this office? That when you try and even address the other, you don't have success. Your best efforts I'm stealing Ryan language, but your best efforts get turned upside down on its head. Both of you want this to be better, but all of your attempts to make it better. So can I stay with that for a moment?
Yeah.
when you try to make this process better.
Yeah.
And it does, and it's not working.
Right.
Can I see what it looks like for you two there? And that's how I like when it's too big in general to bring it back again. So anyway.
Again, I think that's going to work a lot of the time. I think and I don't know if that would have worked with this couple, just because it's so hot. So I needed one more level of explicitness.
Okay.
When you two try to have a conversation about X,
That's it.
But you could also add, when you're doing your best to have a conversation that heals this.
That's
so
it.
it has to be about that specific content, right?
Y'all pay it. That's good language,
Because
right
that's where they are.
When you try to heal from this other or this affair or
XYZ, name it.
XYZ, name it.
Yep.
I need to see what's getting in the way of your ability to repair. What's getting in the way of that?
Yeah, and even then, sometimes they go thematic in a story. Yeah. Which anytime that happens, I'm going to summarize, bring it back, right? So sometimes it's helpful to say who brings it up. That sometimes is tactical enough to go, oh, okay, we're talking. Yeah,
and I hope y'all caught what Ryan just gave you. And even we're not saying like if you ask the right question, they're going to always do the right thing.
No.
But even if they keep being thematic, look at what he just gave you intervention. Summarize an empathic summary that validates them and reset back at it. Yeah. Sometimes they might need you to do that 3 times before they drop in.
Yeah. And so once we had the trigger, which is the perception from the offendee, from the offender, according to her, then it's just regular old EFT. Like we're blocked everywhere, and there's a block here and a block there. But there's secondary kind of experiences being shown, primary being hidden. But my body can relax into that. But in the chaos of that early moment, like we would have gotten philosophical on what's an affair, what's not a affair, what's a betrayal. You can in hetero people, can you have same opposite gender friends? Like it can go this philosophical 100 light years away, and you're going to be out of time.
And that's where I don't want to set my focus at.
No, you can't recover. Because any opinion you have on those matters is probably harmful in that moment.
That's right.
Even if it's a nice research-based opinion, it has nothing to do with them. Yeah. That's me trying to enforce a culture on them.
That's right. And for all of you, if you're listening, so we're saying this because there is an order of change in EFT. That's why you have to trust the map. In stage 1, you have to de-escalate the negative cycle. If you start trying to talk about solutions and give them philosophical understanding when there's complete chaos, they will either harm each other with it, harm themselves, and they probably will club you over the head with it as a therapist. In EFT, though, once we've calmed that down and we can form a positive cycle, stage 3, we'll do that kind of stuff all day long. So let's talk about it. Like, so how do you decide who can be a part of your relationship and how to have friendships with people of same or opposite gender? You can do that in stage 3. There's order to it.
Yeah.
So we're not completely saying like, we'll never do that. It's just not the time.
Yeah.
If they're in chaos, we know what's going to happen if we try and have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think going back to the topic of the series, again, when you're walking down the hall, when you're about to close the door, when you're about to have them enter the room as a couple, there's some preparation that's really helpful here. Because if you're going to just go like, I'm just going to go have a conversation with people, I'm just going to follow the emotion. I mean, follow the emotion is not a bad thought if you know EFT like the back of your hand, and if all your moves are instinctually EFT, fine.
Yeah.
But that's not true for many of us, because most of us are informed by a linear culture, and if you don't have some idea of what we're going to focus on, you're going to end up mediating or trying to resolve conflict or teaching skills.
That's right. And even if EFT therapist says I'm gonna follow emotion, what probably is also being the unset part is I'm going to follow it and see where they break down in it. So they might say, I'm going to follow the emotion. They grab sadness. And the EFT therapist might keep priming and working with sadness and assembling sadness. And then they're going to eventually find out, like, can they talk about it? And can you respond to it? And if it breaks down, then they're going to say, uh-oh. So I followed the emotion and it showed me where your process breaks down. And then they're going to set focus. We just call that they found the fray.
Yeah.
They found where their attempts to solve it fail over and over.
Blocked, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for all of us to have some kind of deconstructed thought or two. It's like golf. They say you can have one or maybe 1.5 thoughts as you're about to swing. If you have a third thought, it's going in the woods. And I think the EFT is like that too. So for some people, follow the emotion. It's not necessarily that's all they're doing. It just means that's all I'm going to choose to think about that. For other people, it's I'm just going to be with people. right? Really general things, but really beautiful things. And once again, if you've been doing this for a long time and your organic instincts are always going to keep you on the tango, then those are probably good. But if you're like the rest of us, you know, who are learning, it's like F.R.A.y might not be a bad thought as you're walking down the hall. Not necessarily in session all the time, but down the hall. I'm like, I wonder where their F.R.A.y is today. Like, where is the status of their strength, their tolerance window, where they can and where they can't repair. I know that's where they need me.
That's good. And if you try and go there and they can't handle it, Ryan gave the corrective move there. Just summarize, give that empathic summary, and validate, and reset the focus again.
Yep.
Wow. That's very clean.
Yep. So I just think about that life and what it taught me. Like, it marks me in my brain because I can trust it now, right? Just exactly what our couples need is corrective experience. So I'm like, man, this is not typically what we would want alive. I'm glad it happened now. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the local group and the local therapists who are wonderful. I hope that didn't come across as critical.
Nope.
But typically you don't want a contraindicator like that for a live demonstration. But it was good for me to go, okay, even in this situation, we've got to shrink this down to a workable space, because the affair or the not affair was not the issue. It's the fact that we can't have an attuned conversation about the other, right? And once I can get there and get a trigger, I'm like, oh, okay, now we got the affect assembly. Now we're going for, the attachment meaning and then the emotion. Now we're going to see if we can have these missing conversations to redeem their bond.
Man. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for that community you got to work.
Yep.
Thank you for them and their willingness to lean in and get trained and
talk about hard things.
Exactly how I'm about to say, and not run away from something that's hard.
That's right.
So.
That's right. That's courage.
Yeah. And thank you all. I know Ryan did his thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. And I'm sure, right now as we record this, it's around the holiday season, depending on where you are, what culture kind of perspective. But just want to say thank you for helping your clients get ready for this and how they're going to go home and face some different parts of their story. Just thank you for what you do. Yeah. All right. Have a good day, y'all.
Thank you for listening. We hope this experience helps you push the leading edge in your work to help people connect with themselves and with each other. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review. You can contact us at pushtheleadingedge@gmail.com, and you can follow us on our Facebook page at Push the Leading Edge. You can follow Ryan on Facebook at Ryan Rana Professional Training and on his website, ryanranatraining.com. You can follow James on Facebook and Instagram at DocHawkLPC. You can also check out his website, dochawklpc.com.